Hello and welcome to another episode of the ENT Youth Services Podcast. ENT Youth Services strives to empower, nurture, and transform opportunity youth to become individuals with essential life skills that are necessary to make a valuable contribution in their communities. Stay connected with ENT via your favorite social media apps and help us get the word out by giving us a 5-star rating. Today, the ENT Parent Partners are tackling the serious topic of human trafficking. We are delighted to be joined by Dr. Shana Gage, a board-certified pediatric psychiatrist who is guiding our parents through this discussion and answering questions from the larger Washington, D.C. community on how to navigate this troubling reality. Stay connected with ENT via your favorite social media apps and help us get the word out by giving us a 5-star rating. Okay, let's get to today's episode.
Hello everyone, this is the ENT Youth Services Parent Podcast, and today we're going to be talking about sex trafficking. I'm Malachi Bebby. I'm a M4 medical student in Howard, and I'm joined today with, and you guys can introduce yourselves.
Good evening, my name is Jennifer Heaven.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Kimberly Sharp. I'm a registered nurse within the District of Columbia and a parent of 4 children. So excited to be here today.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Shana Gage. I'm a psychiatrist in the DMV area. I'm also a mother to 4 girls. So this is an absolutely important and relevant topic for me as well.
All right, perfect. Okay, then let's just get started. I mean, I know this is a very sensitive topic, and I've been doing some research on it, but in my all full honesty, I don't know a lot, especially when it comes to how it affects like the DMV area and how the impact that it's having. What exactly is like sex trafficking or human trafficking? Anyone can answer this. I was just wondering what is kind of your definition of it, and what are like maybe some misnomers about it?
Okay, well, I can start. So first of all, thanks again for having me here.
Of course.
Basic trafficking is really compelling a victim, which can be a minor or an adult, to engage in commercial sex, or outside of this, it's also used in terms related to labor. So working in illicit industries as well. For child sex trafficking, coercing a minor, so someone under 18, to engage in sexual acts for profit.
Okay. So I'm going to start more just, I guess, right now, I just maybe want to ask some questions that our parents had sent us and kind of gauge like what their concerns are. So I'll start with what are like the hallmark signs that parents should recognize as potential concerns?
Sure. So, I think in this day and age, right, one of the first things that we have to talk to parents about is just being aware of what your children, your teens are into. One of, or probably the most common way that teens are being solicited now is through the internet. So there's always talk about electronics, anytime that our kids are on the World Wide Web, they are exposed to people and things that, we may not necessarily know about. They may not come to us about. And that's a really scary thought, because when we talk about the time that children spend on electronics, again, this is time that we're assuming it's fun stuff or homework, but they're also, again, open to people finding them, sending them messages, and potentially recruiting them for work. So the first thing I say is always be aware of what your children are doing on their phones, who they're talking to, what apps they're going to, and checking it, making sure that the things that are on there are appropriate for their age. And supervision, just supervision, because again, this is the number one way that kids are being solicited. So some signs, of course, I mean, if someone's having excessive time on electronics, you want to be aware, know why they're spending all this time, because a lot of the conversations before a child is trafficked are happening on the internet first. So excessive time spent on electronic devices. A lot of times, once they actually start, talking to people, it could be a young female or male who start talking about being in a relationship or having someone who, is showing interest in them. If they are open with their parents, they may share that. So, if your child starts talking about someone who's interested in them or wanting to date them, that you start asking questions about that. A lot of times it can be seeing your children bringing home items that you did not purchase. So it may be gifts that they're getting from either a recruiter or someone who's trafficking or planning to traffic them. So maybe in the form of designer clothes or handbags, or, they may have a new phone and you didn't purchase them a new iPhone 15. So where did you get that? Sometimes having multiple phones. Why do you have another phone? Like, I bought you one phone, but you have another phone that I know I did not purchase. Physical appearance. Does your child start dressing a different way than usual? More provocative clothing? Have they got, any new tattoos or marks on their body that you obviously didn't approve, or you've never seen before? And also on the physical side, they're starting to get their nails done or their hair done, or having makeup on their face that, again, you haven't really approved of or taken them to purchase these things. So where are they getting these things from? Abrupt changes in behavior, in mood, defiance, being oppositional, potentially running away from home. I think those are kind of some of the key things that parents should look out for.
Okay, I see. And then I think for me, I was thinking like kind of be somewhat of a double-edged sword, especially with being on electronics and social media. It's almost like kind of used today to like keep track of, I guess, like your kids and things like that. And so I was just wondering, like, Jennifer, Kimberly, if you have any like concerns with that or like troubles with like keeping track of like where they're doing online or things like that.
Thank you, Dr. Gage, again for joining us. But my concern is, there's so many different apps out there. It's like every day something new pops up that they know how to navigate, but you are like, what is this about? And it's difficult to, I guess, kind of keep track of everything. I do have an app on my phone as far as a locator for my kids, so I know where they are at all times. And if anything were to happen to them, or if they were missing or anything like that. But there's times where my middle child, she has a tendency to turn the locator off. So I have to remind her that this is not an option. This will have to stay on. For whatever reason, I'm not sure why she turns it off. Most of the time she's at school anyway. But that's something that, I just have to instill in her, like, this needs to stay on. There's so many things going on in the world that, I need to know where you are, and I need to be able to find you if something were to happen to me or if something happened to you. These are some of the safety factors that I try to instill in them, and just to communicate if something is off. My youngest daughter, she's the informant, so she'll tell me everything, whether it's her business or not. So that's a good thing, because she's comfortable in talking to me about anything that's going on.
Okay. Unless Kimberly wanted to say something, but
No, I just wanted to just piggyback off of Jennifer. Again, I mentioned earlier, I'm a mom of 4. So my oldest is 18 and my youngest is 6. And so we've been kind of navigating this, social media electronic device. We've been navigating that for some time now. And I think that, I echo everything that Jennifer mentioned. We actually have an 11-year-old right now who does not have a phone, but who has been begging for a phone for a couple of years now. So we're ready to kind of take that leap. But I'm definitely finding that I'm having to prepare to take that leap a little bit more than I had to, I think, with my older children. Like, it's just, there's so much out there right now. But, it's a hard balance because you want them to have that access just in case things happen, especially, society the way it is right now in terms of, things happening at school, emergency situations in which you want them to be able to get in contact with you and you being able to get in contact with them. But there's also those concerns of, them going down that kind of rabbit hole of access to people and potentially being in contact with people who don't have the best interests. So I appreciate, Dr. Gage, the information you're already providing, because it's very practical. It's really good to hear those things that you might not really pick up on, like those subtle changes that might take place.
Yeah, that's great. And kind of toward that, like I was just like thinking, because I feel like a big thing of what like Dr. Gage has also said, it kind of starts with like seeing these different activities of what your child is doing, as well as like talking with them about safety issues. Like, how do you guys, like Jennifer, Kimberly, or I think C, you're on as well. Like, how do you like manage or like start these conversations about like their safety and like for just conversation based off like boundaries and things like that?
For me, I've been talking to my girls, especially my son as well, but my girls especially, since they were going to school, since they were 5 years old. You have to start these conversations early. It can be something as simple as, we don't sit on anybody's laps. I will never, ever send anybody that you don't know to come pick you up. If you hear somebody say that I'm coming to pick you up because your mother sent me, those are things that I would never do. If you don't know the person, then, I wouldn't send that person. These are the people who will be coming to get you or are authorized to do such. And, any things at school, and it, like I said, you have to start the conversation early, and it seems like you have to do it earlier and earlier now, because there's so much that's going on. But it's still, I continue to instill those things. Everybody is not your friend. You can't do certain things that other people are doing. They can get away with it, but you'll be the one in trouble. Just different conversations of what happens at school. You're able to call me if it's an emergency and the teacher is not letting you. And I try not to, but I'm just like, if it's something that's serious, you can pick up your cell phone and you can call me in class. If it's something that's, that I need to know right away. But it's just having that conversation early and keeping it consistent, especially with the different changes. And if there's something new that pops up, something new that's occurring, it requires a conversation with your kids so they have a clear understanding of what should be done and what you feel about different scenarios.
And what I can say to that, I think it's so hard because as parents, you want to protect your kids. You really don't want to expose them to this sort of, that the world is such a violent and corrupt and terrible place, but you really don't have a choice because they either learn this from you or they learn from someone else who you don't want them to learn it from. And so there's really this difficult task of parents of, you protect your children, you keep them in safe places, but letting them know that the rest of the world may not have those same intentions and introducing them to, these sort of ideas that may seem very foreign to them because they know the comfort and safety of home. But it is something that in this day and age, we just have to do.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I have found to be helpful too is because I have older children, I have an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old, I rely on them as well because they kind of have more of a pulse on things than I do sometimes. And my oldest daughter is notorious for coming to me and saying, "Hey, mom, I noticed that so and so has been looking at this, and you might want to look at that." Or she sometimes even steps in and will have that kind of conversation with my younger kids that, that might not be appropriate. Let's talk about that. And then she'll kind of come and tell me as well.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. And then, Miss Bethia, do you have any things you wanted to add or say?
Hello, yes. Hi, everyone. I'm actually a parent, but I do a lot of community work as well. What I will say, I guess, from listening to everyone, a lot of the parents, I guess I have the oldest set of children. My sons are grown. They're knocking on 30, my twins. But what I can say over the years about just in general, the main thing is to keep your kids busy. Growing up, raising children in DC in particular, the main thing is to kind of get that rapport with the school. They should have your number on speed dial. A lot of things that the school knows that you may not know that's going on. There are other kids that may reach out to counselors at the school. Being an active and involved parent with the school is very essential to the overall success of your children. In addition to that, I would say keep them active, keep them in activities. What I've noticed is, especially during the pandemic, a lot of kids really just didn't have any outlet outside of social media. And, idle hands, idle time leads to mischievous. But at the end of the day, when you're looking at children in particular, the goal is to take up most of their time. They're going to get up, breakfast, get them off to school, things of that nature, get them involved in activities that's going to be after school. And then they begin to develop relationships with the students that's in a lot of the activities that they're in. And so when it's time to come home, you partner with other parents, as far as getting the kids back home, or if they're riding public transportation, they'll go in groups and things of that nature. So it really does take a community. And like I said, my sons are all adults now. But I am raising a 14-year-old. When it comes down to having devices, I was a firm believer in making sure that if they're going to have a device, have they earned a device? Do they have the grades to warrant having a device? We've developed in this society now that we think that these kids should just get things and they don't work hard for it. If you're going to always give them everything that they want when they want it, when they get into the real world or the workforce, we have unrealistic goals and aspirations because no one's going to just give them what they want in the workplace. So I'm hoping that for all of you all that's mentioned that your kids have some sort of access to social media or some sort of phone or tablet or whatever you're giving them, that they've actually earned it. This is not something that you just give to a child. And, when you say something, mean what you say. And as far as, being vigilant and looking out for predators, and things of that nature. Again, that's where the activities really kind of help out because when they're in group activities, especially large group activities, the kids look out for each other. And that's where that sense of community comes in. And I think that's kind of like where you can kind of hone in on making sure that you have, because you're not going to be able to be around to watch your child every hour and second of the day. So you have to build that sense of community. And Dr. Forrester also knows that I work heavily with the band. Band teaches a lot of different techniques and opportunities, but same thing with sports, same thing. When you have those opportunities available to the children and keep them busy, that's the main thing. A lot of times the parents, purchase these video games and false sense of realities, even with these video games. Please note that predators are on these video games. If they're playing online, you don't know who they're online playing with. You don't know who they're talking to. So again, if you have them in some sort of activity where it's constructive, they're physically using their muscles and development in their brain, teaching them things that, you can't get from sitting behind a TV and moving your thumbs 20 miles a second. You know what I mean? So you want to make sure
Mhm.
that you have them where they're in those types of situations. So give them those types of opportunities.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I've definitely growing up, I was busy with many things too, and I didn't realize how like helpful that was until like later on in life. And then, so like I would say one other concern that we had, or one of the questions we had was like, what are like the most common forms of kids traffic or sex trafficking that you have seen? But like, again, you kind of already answered this question, but if you wanted to talk about
So
that real
there,
quick.
there are really like four main types um, that are, broken down into family controlled sex trafficking, which is, I mean, something I think it will be hard for any of us to even imagine. You have what's called survival sex, you have gang controlled, and then you have what people kind of classically know, which is pimp controlled. Um, so family controlled is just what it says. You can have family members who will sell kids, their own children, or could be nieces, nephews, um, and for various reasons. Sometimes you can have a parent who has just kind of been in that lifestyle, and so they don't really see anything wrong with it. And for most of their lives, and when they have children, they kind of like grooming them along the way so that as they get older, they're prepared for this. So, you can have parents who are addicted to drugs, alcohol, and this is how they're able to get money. Parents who or family members who owe others large amounts of money, and this may be what that person asks. Pay this debt off, give me your niece, or give me your daughter. Um, it can be for, more desperate things like paying medical costs of something, and you kind of will justify, like, look, there's no other way we can get this money, have this opportunity that would help us pay, our medical bills. And the problem with this is, again, if someone who is most trusted to you, or who you trust the most in your life, will betray you this way, this really kind of alters your whole life in a way. Like, how can you ever trust anyone else? And for children, of course, if this is your parent, you may be afraid to tell because you may lose your home or not have a parent to take care of you. So what is the alternative? Who will I be with if I tell and my parent gets arrested? What will happen to me? And maybe a parent will threaten you, like, oh, well, you could tell on me, but what will happen to you out there will be way worse. So, you decide, and that really makes it difficult for kids to kind of figure out how to get help. You then have survival sex, which, I think definitely has a different spin, but it is the same concept. You have young people who are selling sex. And in most cases, for survival sex, there may not be a person in the middle, such as, a pimp or someone who recruited you to do this. You may be online one day and, for whatever need you have, someone offers to pay for sex, and you decide that this may be the only way you can get your needs met. And for some, which we know a lot of families in our area are, on the lower side of socioeconomic status. So you may have someone who needs this to pay for food, to pay for rent, to pay for clothes, to help take care of their younger brothers and sisters. And so in this case, the buyer themselves becomes the trafficker, because you are paying for sex for someone who, again, in most cases may be underage. And the response, again, for this may be different because, when you ask for help, someone may say to you, well, no one forced you into this. You did this on your own. So they assume that you wanted this lifestyle, and that, in some cases, like, hey, that's what you wanted, that's what you got. And so it can be very difficult from the standpoint of, just shame and guilt about what you've done, to seek out help and actually become someone that others look at as a victim. They may say, this is what you chose to do. That also happens in cases where you have people who have been victims of abuse or rape, And by doing this, they feel like they've developed a sense of control. I can pick and choose who I want to have sex with, even though I'm getting money for it, but no one is taking advantage of me anymore. Or, they're not taking it when I didn't consent to it. And so they can be kind of fooled into thinking over time that they now have more control if they've come from a previously abusive situation.
Absolutely.
The next one, we have gang controlled. And, in this area, I think probably, gangs are a serious problem. A lot of this happens within the Latino populations, especially in DC. And, for a long time, gangs were able to get away with, whether it's drugs or weapons. And when you think about it, you sell drugs or you sell guns, that's a one-time sale, you get your money. But for one young girl or young man, multiple sales off of the same item or same, in this case, a person. And so I think over time, they've learned that trafficking humans has become a very lucrative way to continue operating their gang, getting the funds to recruit more people, and then continue all of their business ventures. And, again, a difficult one because a lot of the girls or young men who become associated with gangs are doing it out of a sense of desperation. They want love. They want someone who accepts them. And they kind of form an allegiance to the gangs. And it now becomes difficult for them to see themselves as victims. They just feel like they're down for what their gang and the people who love them want them to do. And they're part of this greater cause. And, in that case, it becomes very difficult to be able to speak to them and show them that that is not something that they should be doing and that, there are other options for them. And then, of course, the classic, which is pimp controlled, male or female. Pimps really don't take on that image that we kind of know and see on TV. Pimps can take all kinds of forms. Women, even teens, children can be pimps. I remember working in a facility in Baltimore a couple of years ago, and it was a substance abuse rehab facility. And one of my patients, he would, talk about how many girls in his neighborhood he would pimp out and get money for. And he wasn't even making a lot of money. He, have oral sex with this person and, he would get like $20 for it. Not even significant amounts of money, but for him, he knew he could control some of the girls. And this was his way of just getting some extra side change. And so pimps come again in different forms. It can be initially someone who has a romantic interest in you. They build up your trust. They make you believe that you love them, that they love you. And, then they slowly transfer into this person who's like, well, if you love me, you'll do this particular thing. And at first you're questioning, like, I thought you loved me. Like, I do love you, but I want you to do this thing for us. And, sell you dreams about what life will be like with them if you do these things. And again, if you're coming from a place of either low self-esteem or, abusive family or people who have just not made you feel worthy, this is how they can get their in, make you feel valued, and then over time, what we call that grooming process, and then over time, turn you into a worker.
Hi, my name is Diallo Watts, and I am a part of the ENT Youth Partners. I just wanted to insert a short interruption to tell you about our sponsor. Today, our sponsor is you, the listener. Thank you so much for donating to ENT Youth Services on our website. Every dollar goes towards plans to continue our impactful workshops, expand our reach on social media, continue our successful podcast, and so much more. If you would like to sponsor ENT, please email us at contact@entyouth.com. Thank you so much for your continued support. Now, let's get back to the episode.
For anyone else, like Kimberly, do you have any comments or any questions first, or to Dr. Gage?
Not a question right now. I think more so a comment. Just it's so interesting to be learning that, I think I like a lot of people kind of had this idea of what I think trafficking always looked like, that traditional idea of, someone specific like a pimp, like Dr. Gage mentioned. So it's, I think a big takeaway for me from this is, and also I see it in the work I'm doing too, working with, you know, um, pregnant women who are living with HIV. We are seeing a lot of our patients who were, formerly or currently still um, engaged in, sex trafficking. And so, but I think my big takeaway is that it takes different shapes and forms. So it doesn't look one way. And so I feel like I'm just learning a lot more than I thought I knew.
No, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, same with me. I didn't really know about those different types. I mean, obviously we already know like you said, like how we see it in shows and TV, but didn't know. And then Mr. Theo, you wanted to say anything or have any comments at all?
Like I said, I guess I'm still on the whole, being more involved and being vigilant, especially with what's transpiring today when it comes down to children and knowing where they can go for safe spaces, and from the parental aspect of things. I guess spending more time with the children and just having that open level of communication to talk to them about, what's going on in their lives, what are they exposed to. I know that there are supposed to be resource officers in the schools and things of that nature. And I know with MPD, they're supposed to be having, police out, during certain times, when kids are en route to school and leaving from school. But I guess the main thing is dealing with some of the concerns internally when Dr. Gage had mentioned about substance abuse and domestic violence, um, you know, within the African American community in particular, when you're talking about taboo, about talking about what's going on in your household, is just stay in your household. A lot of those things needs to be addressed as well, even when it comes down to seeking mental health assistance. You have a lot of parents that are dealing with domestic violence situations, and they're unbeknownst to them. Sometimes their attacker or abuser are also, forecasting a lot of those types of behaviors on their kids, and that can also cause kids to act out and things of that nature. So, I would like to direct my question towards Dr. Gage. So,
Yeah, please.
with the situations where kids are involved in households where there's domestic violence, when it's not being addressed within the household, when you're talking about parents having children in the household, what are you seeing as far as not addressing the issue at all, not even believing that there is an issue or a concern, and how those types of things lead children? It kind of pushes them into the direction of meeting up with those types of individuals that are predators, which in turn turn into those types of sex traffickers that you were referring to.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you raise a point that probably spans generations in healthcare, which is people will come in and they are told not to share, right? Not to talk about what goes on in their home. And I think in some cases, you have parents, moms who've been through their own trauma, strike them as being traumatic to their children. And so they don't understand why someone would have issue with this. You have moms who've seen their moms being hit by someone, then they grow into domestic violence situations, and that's just what they know. And then again, their children see the same, and it becomes difficult to have someone who you feel like you can trust. Such, again, the importance of mentors and wonderful teachers and even medical providers like Dr. Forrester, who kind of have this instinct and can pick up on things when they're in visits with family members. And it's important, like for the med students on here, that you learn and you're in these environments where you can learn from, your mentors, your attendings who know how to pick up on things, on signs that the average person may not see, so that you can ask the proper questions, or you can ask to speak to someone by themselves. Like, hey, mom, dad, I'd like to talk to the kiddo on their own. And even that, a parent saying, no, you can't do that, may sometimes be a signal. Why? Like, I want to ask them questions. Why, I'm in a medical office, trusted provider. So when a parent pushes back on that, sometimes, it can potentially be a signal that they want to hide something from you. But I think, again, the biggest thing is on our side as medical providers, knowing how to pick up on signs and things that are not explicit, not put out to you by the parent, by the kid, signs of depression, signs that they are fearful when they're in the room with whoever's come with them, and them just having a safe person or a safe place that they can talk about these situations.
All right, thank you very much. And then Jennifer, did you want to add anything at all, or ask anything to Dr.
Well, I know, just to piggyback a little bit off of some of the things that she says, with at least my children, I know I've encountered situations where, I don't let my children just go to anybody's house. And I've seen parents who are just very nonchalant and, oh yeah, she can go over there or he can go there, but they don't even know me or what I do in my household, which is concerning. So I do try to have that conversation with the parent. I make sure I have a conversation so they can feel comfortable and let them know what I do in my household and in my space, and know that their child is in a safe place. And in that, I also try to get my kids to, talk to their friends if there's anything that seems a little off, that they're able to tell me or tell a counselor or tell a teacher, because the child may not go to an adult, but they'll tell their best friend about certain things that are going on. And yes, it's, don't talk about what's going on in my household, but at the same time, they may not have an outlet other than their friends at school. So I try to get my kids to engage with their friends. And if something seems off or they feel something's weird or concerning, I try to get them to at least tell me or tell a teacher so that something can be addressed for that particular child at the time. So it's just, it's a scary world, but, we're just trying to navigate the best way we know how.
Thank you for that. Thank you a lot. And then I think we have about one more time for at least one more question before we let Dr. Gage maybe wrap up a little bit. And then again, we're going to have multiple episodes on this, so definitely have some more. And then my question, mainly for the parents, is I wanted to know, in your eyes, what are your, obviously we've already asked this before, but maybe what are your concerns, and also how do you go about creating that trust with your own child and stuff like that? How are you able to do that?
Well, more of the same, just giving them the opportunity to talk to me about anything, and know that if I get upset with something, it doesn't mean that I don't love them, and never be afraid to tell me anything, no matter what it is. And I try to keep that consistent with them and ask them questions and be engaged as much as possible with things that are going on in their world, in their life, whether good or bad. It's just continue that open communication for me.
Right, that makes sense. That's also, very helpful. Luckily, my parents are really good with communicating in that and doing that with me. So I can see what you mean. And then Kimberly, to chime in at all?
I probably echo the same sentiment as Jennifer, is keeping the lines of communication open, but also, someone else mentioned earlier in the call, regarding just boundaries too, and just not being afraid as a parent to set boundaries, and understanding or helping your children to understand that having access to, devices, a phone or a tablet or a laptop or whatever it is a privilege, and it's not, necessarily, I mean, society's different now. So it's kind of like everyone has a cell phone. So kids, I think, feel like, well, everybody has a cell phone, so I should have a cell phone. But something I had to share with my 11-year-old is I take you to school, or dad takes you to school, or grandma takes you to school, and we always pick you up. So, there's not really a lot of time where you are spending time away from us aside from in school, and we don't know where you are. So I think just, again, being able to, as a parent, understand that it is okay for you to set those boundaries, and to also establish that it is a privilege that is earned, and not just given.
And I think even if our children have those devices, the boundaries, again, we are able to take them away, and, I've done that several times with all three of my children. If there's a circumstance or incident where, okay, this was a gift, this was a privilege, now you have done something or you haven't done something as far as schoolwork or whatever is concerned, you will get that device taken away, because there are consequences to your actions, and they have to learn those things about having consequences, and not just giving them things because everybody around them has it.
Amen. I agree with that. Amen. It can be taken away. Yes, I second that emotion as well.
What I would add to that, and it's probably kind of archaic, but you can have a kid who has a phone literally that can just call and like doesn't have access to internet or apps or ways to block anything from being downloaded on your phone unless you have given some sort of permission. So, if it's a safety concern, or they are having to take a bus or something like that, there are ways to get phones to literally make a call, take a call, but not any of the other ways that they can, kind of be exposed to some of these predators.
Well, I have a 7-year-old and she has a phone, but she's only allowed to use it when we are not with her. Other than that, it's controlled by her father or me. We always view what she sees. My 17-year-old, I don't have a problem with her as yet. She has made the right moves, so she hasn't had that privilege for me to take the phone away. I wish I could do that, but so far I don't have trusting issues with my two girls, thank God, to this point. But I completely understand other parents' concern, but I haven't had that issue so far. Thank you, Jason.
When my sons were younger, and they were teenagers, I drafted a contract and what my expectations were from them. And they had to sign it and date it. So it was never a point of argument when it came down to accountability, because these are the things that we sat down, we reviewed, and said, this is your type of behavior. We know what was up front that was expected of you. And so once you signed that document, you knew, like I would always tell them, you can do pretty much whatever you want to do. If you want to go to a party, you want to do all these different things, sure, the answer is always yes up front, until you have proven otherwise. So the accountability was always where they had it in their hands when it came down to knowing what was expected of them. And as far as the 7-year-old with the phone, I was like, wow. But I mean, to each his own. At the end of the day, it's more or less just making sure that the children know that, that there are people out here that do not have their best interests. And, you have to kind of present those types of things when, just in passing, even if it's just getting in the car, riding somewhere, nowhere in particular, just have the open communication with them to talk to them about what's going on in their world. Times have definitely changed. And the perception is, they need acceptance from others. From social media has created a false sense of reality to believe that they need all of this acceptance from other people, when they really just need to find what's going on with themselves and do what they need to do for what's more beneficial to them. And that's all I have for a takeaway.
Okay. No, thank you. Really, I kind of like the contract thing. I'm kind of really curious about that. But with before I get to wrap up with Dr. Gage, Shafo, do you wanted to add anything or any questions quickly?
Yeah, so my question is for the parent. So I'm not a parent yet, but I have a 11-year-old nephew, and he's at the age where he doesn't talk. So it's just like, how do you approach these kids who are coming from like having traumatic experience? How do you make a safe space for them to even open up to you, the parents?
How old is the child?
He's 11.
He's 11, you said. Okay. It's spending time. I mean, they have to build that rapport with you. Once they're at that particular age, it's not like where there's a small child where you can kind of show by, doing different activities with them. This is more or less where you have to build that relationship with them. It's almost like you have to start from scratch. They can hear you say you love them every day, but you have to kind of like show them in means of saying, okay, let's do this, or let's do this different activity. I would say spend more hands-on. I don't know, even if it's something as simple as like Legos or like the magnetic things that the little boys, I remember trying to think back when my sons were young, but those types of things. And then those types of environments creates a open and safe environment for them to start talking with you about different things. So it's not where you need to come out and directly ask them anything. The child will do that because they have comfort and they feel comfortable to be able to open up to talk to you. But again, that's something that's going to take time. That's something where you're going to have to sit down with that child one-on-one, just you and them, not you, them, and anything else, no other distractions. And then you can kind of build from there.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, perfect. And then Dr. Gage, if you wanted to wrap up for us a little bit, I think we're about out of time. Mainly, I just wanted to we can talk more about this in the next couple episodes, but I feel like a good closing thing is maybe just quickly go through like what some resources or what you should do if you do see these signs or things like that, if you are concerned.
Okay, so, obviously we talked about some of the hallmark signs of things, you can look out for. I think it's important to just understand that this whole human trafficking comes from demand, right? So where does the demand come from? There's mental illness on both sides, okay? So a lot of the people who are seeking out these children to have sex with or to, have as victims are people who have addictions, sex, drugs, pornography. And so, there's accountability on both sides. When we have young men, our young teen boys or women who have husbands who, are suffering with these sorts of issues, doing everything you can to get them help. Because if there are no customers, there can be no workers. So, if you have someone in your life who struggles with something, I'm seeing a lot more of young teen boys struggling with sex addictions, pornography. Again, access to the internet is a huge part of why this is happening. Obviously, those who have been in some sort of traumatic situation in their lifetime, that's one way we can tackle it from the side of those who are perpetrators. From the side of our victims, most people who are able to recruit them, they're feeling an unmet need. So if young men, young women who are suffering depression or, trauma, abuse, and sometimes it may not look like that. I've known sexual trafficking victims who've come from wonderful homes and they just felt their homes were too strict and they didn't want to do what their parents wanted them to do. And, someone else just kind of promised them freedom and to give them the things that they wanted and not have to live under rules and regulations. So it comes from meeting an unmet need. That is the victim, someone who has an unmet need, and somebody's able to sniff that out and try to promise them what it is that they're lacking. So obviously at risk are those who've been abused, those with substance abuse issues, those with homelessness, those with learning disabilities, family dysfunction, lack of support. So these are the things that just really you want to look out for and be aware of. And these are the people who you want to reach out to and know this is someone who could potentially be a target for this. Be careful, of course, again, of who your children and loved ones are friends with. A lot of the people who are recruited by those who they know very well. It can be a friend of a friend. It can be a mentor. It can be a teacher. So the people who your children are around are really important to know and to have as much information about them, so that you're aware of any risk that your children can be in. And then I guess the final thing, again, we talked about it, is just being aware of what your children are doing. Be in their business. I am not your friend. I'm your parent. I tell my kids all the time, like, you probably don't like me. That's okay. But everything I do for you, I do out of love. So it is to protect you. It is to make sure you're safe. And they get that. And so at this point, a lot of parents just want to be friends and be cool and let their kids do what they want and be the cool parent. That is not going to work. You have to be in their business, know everything that they're doing as to the best of your ability. But again, it's when we're not paying attention that these sorts of things can really take place. In terms of, resources, number one, the national resource for this is basically the human trafficking web. They have a web page, but of course, the National Human Trafficking Hotline. It's 1-888-373. Hold on, I'm typing. And 7888. You can also text help to, and this could be something on site. Like if you see something while you're out that makes you suspicious that something's happening that shouldn't, you see a young woman in a car with a male and she either, makes some gesture or signal that, you're like, oh, well, something's not right. You can call that number. There are programs in DC and there are quite a few, so it's hard to go through, but places where, women can find refuge. There is a website, cfsa.dc.gov, and it's specific to human trafficking. And they list all of, the potential shelters that are available, the different services that actually work with these women specific to this. Places called Courtney's House, Fair Girls, HIPS. There are specific law centers that are kind of targeting, the perpetrators and working with young women to help to get their perpetrators prosecuted. There are a list of emergency shelters. Well-known ones that we have, like Sasha Bruce. And there's places called Loving Arms, children's homes. There are so many, but if you can go to that website, you can access most of that. And then last thing I would say, and I watched this video, I thought it was really, really wonderful. There is a program that I said called rightsforgirls.org. And they have a documentary. It's all providers who are within the DC area. And they have a documentary on YouTube called Nameless. I found that documentary to be just, very informative, but also it did shed light on how this specific issue is playing out in our area. So, just so you know, DC, 3 major airports, a huge hub. There is so much opportunity for this here. When you have big events that come to town, that is when these things, you get an uptick in them. So, I would, if you can watch that video, I think it would be a really great kind of resource for how this specifically affects our area in DC.
And then before I forget, and I just want to say thank you so much, Dr. Gage, for coming. And we'll have more, at least another 1 or 2 more episodes of this and talk more about these resources. And I'll also want to thank all the parents that are here. Obviously, this is for you, and this podcast is basically you. So I just want to say thank you for everyone to be here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and this is for the ENT Youth Services production. So thank you very much for everyone to be here, and have a great evening.
Thank you for joining us for the ENT Youth Services podcast. We hope you were able to be empowered, nurtured, and transformed by our conversations today. If you want to learn more on this topic, head over to entyouth.com for additional resources and stay connected with us via our social media channels on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you like this podcast, we would appreciate a 5-star rating to help us get these episodes out to the people who need it most.